Hey, what is up you guys? This is the last video I'm going to be filming in this room for a little while. I am going travelling for 4 months starting literally today. I'm going to the airport in like a couple hours and I was like, I haven't filmed this July wrap up yet, so here we are. I'm going to do a July wrap up. I'm actually really annoyed at myself because I had all these videos I wanted to film before I went and then time just flies away. But you know, I can still do them when I'm away. It's just not going to be like, I don't know, the same. But we'll see what happens. This is a warning though, I am going to be uploading travel vlogs for everywhere I'm going for the next 4 months. I'll have like reading stuff in there as well, and I'm still going to do wrap ups, and I still have some book videos I want to try and do like while I'm away, but it's going to be a lot of travel content, so I hope you enjoy it. If you don't enjoy travel content, then you don't have to watch, but I just love documenting like vlogs of traveling for myself more than anything else. Like I just love looking back at all this stuff. So that will be what I'm doing. I will also be still posting, like I'll be having Instagram posts all the time. I will have like my vegan Instagram, my book Instagram. I have a letterboxd account now. I have Goodreads. Like I ain't going anywhere. I will be traveling, but if anything, I'll be more online than ever because I'm just gonna be posting all the time because I'm going away myself. So you know, at night you need someone to talk to, so I'll talk to the internet, which is actually a little bit sad when you say it like that. But anyway, I'm rambling on. This is July wrap up and I have quite a few books to talk about today from a mix of different authors. As usual with my recent wrap ups, I'm not going to talk about books that I just don't have that many thoughts on, so I'm just going to talk about kind of the highlights for the most part. So I hope you enjoy and I hope you leave a like and subscribe. And obviously any of these books, any thoughts on them, leave the thoughts in the comments and I will get back to you. The first book that I'm going to talk about is The Black Dog by Kevin Bridges, and this follows 2 different stories that eventually come together. So the first one is a younger boy, Declan. I think he's like late teenage years, early 20s, and he wants to be a writer, but he grows up in a little bit of a rougher side of, I think it's Glasgow, I'm sure it's set in Glasgow, and you know, he like hides his writing and stuff from like the people around him, and then through not really his own fault, he ends up getting involved in this like gang kind of violence, and his anxieties and stuff kind of skyrocket from there. And then the other story is about this actor called James, and he is in his late 30s, I think, if I remember correctly, and he is really struggling with dealing with his career and then also his family life together because his sister is a drug addict, and you know, the tabloids and stuff love talking about it, and he's really struggling to support his sister and be there for like his wife, but also having a career. And at first these stories seem so completely different, but they come together in such a really fun and unique and interesting way, and I just loved it overall. I really think this could be on my top 10 books of 2022, to be honest. I thought the characters were so realistic, it was gritty, I loved the way that the dialogue was written. They would like code switch between like Scots and English depending on who they were talking to and stuff, which I've never really seen acknowledged in a book, I don't think. Not in the way that it was acknowledged in this anyway, where they actually kind of discussed like having to do that. I thought it was quite fun, and I don't know, I just overall really enjoyed this book. I thought it had really interesting themes and it was really well written, especially considering it is the author's first fiction novel. I can't remember if I said it's written by Kevin Bridges, who is a Scottish comedian, and I'm not really into stand-up comedy. I've never actually really watched any of his stuff. Like I know who he is because he's really famous, but I haven't read any of his things, or sorry, watched any of his things. But I don't know, I just really enjoyed it. Next book I'm going to talk about is Dogs of Summer by Andrea Abreu. This is a Spanish author and this is a translated work, and I just realised how loud those birds are. So this follows a extremely toxic friendship between 2 quite young girls, I think they're like 12, 13ish, and our main character, who is only known as Shit because that is what her best friend, who is like not a nice person, calls her, is like obsessed with this girl, like will do anything she asks, like basically is not even a person without her best friend. Like her entire personality is just trying to impress this girl and copy this girl, and it's kind of sad to read. And it's a very like purposeful like thing. Like you think you're like, this character has nothing to her, but that's on purpose. It's like the theme of the story is about how she's just so obsessed with this other girl, and there's definitely kind of like lesbian undertones implied, but nothing's like set in stone because they are really young, and I don't think they even fully know like what their relationship is. But obviously as an adult reader, you're like reading it and you're like, okay, this is it's strange, it's a little bit romantic at times, but in a toxic way. Like it's really just really interesting. Like I said, I listened to this on audiobook and I thought that the author, the voice that she gave our main character was so kind of realistic for a 12-year-old. Like they use a lot of like crass language and like funny terms for things, and It's a little bit strange first, a little bit jarring, but because you are reading about like the experience of a 12-year-old, or I think maybe 11, 10, I don't know, it's like 11 to 13, that kind of range. Um, it makes sense, and I thought it was really well written in that sense. I would say there is some like weird sexual stuff that you should probably be aware of, and there's also like a very brief sexual assault, which is not like going into any detail or anything. I think it was all handled really well. For what it is. Yeah, I don't know. It was an interesting book. Now I'm talking about it, I'm like, would I actually recommend it? I think I would. I think look into it, and if it sounds like your thing, then read it, but I definitely don't think it's a book for everyone. Next, I read Like a Charm by Elle McNichol, who is another Scottish writer, and she is an autistic woman who writes stories about neurodivergent characters, and they're all kind of late middle grade, early YA range. And I have loved her both other books that I've read, and I really did enjoy this one, but it was the weakest so far for me. This one is a fantasy series about a young girl who discovers that Edinburgh is full of magical creatures, and she has the sight and the ability to see them. And there's a whole kind of plot going on, as there always is, but I don't really want to spoil it because I feel like that really gives you enough to go off of. And she has dyspraxia, which was interesting. I have never read a book about anyone with dyspraxia. I don't even really, or knew, I didn't really know what it was before I read the book. So that was interesting. And overall, I just think that, although I did enjoy this book, it wasn't as unique as her other ones. And I think an issue with middle grade slash lower YA fantasy, especially fantasy that's set in our real world, is trying to make it unique. And I did feel like I had read this book before, to be honest. Like her discovering there's kind of like was essentially like the shadow market from the Shadowhunter series, like just the Fae and everything. I don't think it was the most unique book in the world, but I still really enjoyed it. And you know, obviously it's a Scottish author, and I really do love how she puts neurodivergent characters into these kind of settings. So even though we've read these characters before, not these characters, sorry, these kind of plots before, we've not read them with these characters, and I think that the fact that this representation exists is really interesting and really just great overall. I actually gifted one of her books recently to someone else. Like, I think that she is an amazing author, and I would definitely read the next book in this series, even though I'm saying like it wasn't the most unique. I still gave it 4 stars. I still really enjoyed it, and I would definitely recommend it. The other two I think work well for adult readers as well. This one I think is definitely more aimed at like a younger audience. I would definitely recommend it for a younger audience. I don't think as adult readers we would get as much out of it, but overall I think Elle McNichol is an amazing writer, and I will definitely just read like everything she comes out with. I also this month read Spider-Man Drowned in Thunder by Christopher L. Bennett, and this was the third and final book in this kind of bind up of Spider-Man novels that I was gifted from by Andrew. And this one follows J. Jonah Jameson, who is the director of like the Daily Bugle, like the newspaper. He is obviously like, he hates Spider-Man, that's his whole thing, but he's like ramping up this hate campaign against Spider-Man, and then Spider-Man starts getting attacked by these like robots, and his spider senses start telling him that it's actually J. Jonah Jameson behind it, and he is like trying to set Spider-Man up to like fail really badly and like get people hurt so that everyone like really hates Spider-Man. And overall, I did enjoy this story, but my kind of overall thoughts once I've read all 3 books is that these stories, the issue with them, to me anyway, is that they cannot just be their own self-contained story. They are constantly referencing like other superheroes, other villains, events from like past comics. I've never read comics. I know about different famous storylines, and I've seen like most of the like comic book kind of movies that have been out in the last like 20 years. But it's just constantly like Spider-Man will be battling like one of these robots, and as he's doing it, he's thinking like, this reminds me of the time that I fought Venom and the blah 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 blah, and then this happened, then I died and turned into a clone, and then blah blah. And I'm like, this just like adds nothing to the story you're trying to tell, and it's present in all 3 of the novels that I read, and all 3 were by different authors. So I think this is just kind of like a thing in this format of kind of like superhero novels. I don't know. It just took me out of the story a lot, and it just made me think like, okay, get back to what's happening, because it was just all the time. And obviously like this is a huge world, like you can mention other characters, but it's just like the frequency of it is like too much. But overall I did really enjoy this story, even though I have like that complaint about it, but that's more of a complaint of like all the Spider-Man stories I read. I think this one has some really interesting themes about like media literacy and like trusting the media and, you know, propaganda and things like that, which You know, it's interesting themes, especially for a Spider-Man novel. It's not all action, it actually had like some interesting stuff behind it. And yeah, overall I did enjoy it. I would recommend these kind of novels if you like these characters. I think that it's a really interesting way to get more information and like more stories from these characters that aren't comic books, because I don't know, I keep saying I want to try them and then I pick one up and I'm like, I don't know if I like this. But yeah, overall it was okay. Just wish they didn't reference like other stuff so much. Okay, let's talk about the Gone series by Michael Grant. I read Gone, the very first book, a couple months ago, and then in July I read books 2 to 6. And the basic premise of this series is that in the first book, all of the adults and everyone over the age of, I think it's 15, disappears, and there's this huge like bubble around the town. They cannot see out, and they are like, where are the adults? Like, are they gone forever? Have they been moved? Like, what is going on? What is this thing? And then a lot of the kids start to develop like kind of superpowers, and then animals also start to evolve and become like even more dangerous than ever. And then the story just goes from there. And I absolutely love this series. I was so immersed in it. I do think though that because I read them like one after the other, I binged them completely for like, it wasn't even 2 weeks. Like, I read them so fast. A lot of the events of all the books have blended into one. So like some of the standouts for me, like book 2, Hunger, is really dealing with starvation. Like, a lot of the crops are dying. You know, like they're all kids under the age of 15. They don't know how to look after crops and stuff at first. They like binge ate all the food in the town, like all the sweets and stuff, and now they're like, oh my god, like we might be here like for life, like we shouldn't have done that. And just like so much other stuff happens. These books are just like wall-to-wall drama. Like, you have the basic premise of like this, everyone's starving, but then so much more happens from that. And then obviously you have all the stuff with like the powers, and there's the different there's like 2 different factions. There's like villains, and then there's like this whole like demonic presence that starts to come out. And overall, I'm not even gonna go into the other books really, but like there's so much happens in the whole series that it was just like, it was incredible. I actually loved it so much. It's my favorite reading experience of the year, I think, was just like this series overall. So glad I binged it. And you know, Michael Grant like does not care. He will kill your favorite character, which is so like heart-wrenching. Like, people you love like just get the most gruesome deaths. There's a lot of disgusting stuff in this. Like book 4, Plague. These like bugs which have kind of been lurking around a little bit, I think, before, but they start like going into people, and like, oh, people are like having like bugs like hatching from their skin, like they're like eating from the inside out, like maggots and stuff. Like, oh my god, it was horrible. Just so much happens in this series. I really recommend you read it. There is an issue with like an autistic character which is not written well at all. I don't want to go into it now because it's already like a long section of video, and I just overall like love the series, and I don't think that's a little negative thing should take over the whole thing. But like, I think if you're sensitive to that, definitely look into it, because like it was a bit icky to read at points. Like, it just wasn't well done. But you know, it's a little bit of an older series. I don't know if that's an excuse, but yeah, overall, loved Gone so much, and would definitely recommend it. That is all of the books I'm going to talk about today in this video. I also in July read The Yellow Wallpaper, My Sweet Orange Tree, and Audible original called Consolata, which was like a really short story. And they were all various shades of okay. I think Yellow Wallpaper I gave 3 stars, Consolata I gave 3 stars, and then My Sweet Orange Tree I gave 2 stars. If you want my thoughts on those, add me on Goodreads, go check out there. They were just like okay though, and I just can't be bothered talking about them, to be honest. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you maybe found some good recommendations or some books you don't want to read. I don't know, I kind of talk about good stuff mostly. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and please subscribe, and I will see you soon with lots of travel content and also some bookish stuff, of course. And like I said at the start, I have profiles on like every social media ever, apart from Twitter. I'm still on Twitter. So make sure to follow me and hit me up and follow me, and I just said follow me, so I'm just gonna go now. Thank you for watching and goodbye.